participating. They will be providing the parliamentarian procedures and support. Items to be added to the agenda by the commissioners or staff. Does staff or anyone have something to add? All right. Do we have anyone invited to speak at the end of the meeting, a 5-minute allotment on any item that is not on the agenda? Anyone? Okay. All right, we have the approval of the agenda. I will take a motion to approve the agenda. I have and a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Agenda approved. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the November 13th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Do I have a second?
Whichever one you took out.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Minutes approved. All right, we have a plat. Krista, I would like you to present the plat for Scott and Jennifer Pinkert.
Okay, so this is the plat of 160 acres that they own. It's owned by Scott and Jennifer Pinkert. They are looking to build a tract called the Pinkert Addition. The tract contains 2.3 acres, of which 0.2 acres are the public road right-of-way. Everything meets the specifications that are required by the county. All signatures have been received up to this point for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I would recommend a pass.
The move we approve.
All right, have a motion to approve the plat and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. All right. The next item is our agenda item on a public hearing on proposed ordinance 2016-01C. An amendment to the county zoning ordinances relating to the wind energy systems. The amendments are based upon our work sessions that have been ongoing since last spring. Before I turn it over to the staff for a brief overview, can I get a motion to recommend approval of the ordinance to the Grant County Board of County Commissioners? And do I have a second? Motion to approve in a second. I'm going to turn it over to Todd then to open the public hearing. We're going to run the proponent and opponent testimony together. Just have to state which side you're on, and the staff will read your name.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick brief history over what we've been working on as a group for the last several months. Back in March, the County Commission instructed the Planning Commission to review the existing wind energy rules. In May of 2018, there was a public forum for a couple hours. Over the course of June, July, September, and October, the Planning Commission had several work sessions that talked about various aspects of the zoning ordinance. There was a wind tour in August, then followed up on the 5th of November with a public forum. Information from all of that, public forums and work sessions came back on the 20th of November, and on a 5-2 vote, there was a recommendation to move forward with a public hearing. In addition to all of that, everything up until the 20th of November, information that's been presented for consumption regarding wind energy and wind energy regulations and recommendations and scientific studies has been hosted on a website being hosted by the First Planning District in conjunction with this project. As far as the ground rules moving forward, again, we will call your name, come on up, state your name, your address, try to focus your comments on specific sections of the proposed ordinance. If you don't know the section, then reference your concern, setback, noise, flicker, what have you. Please feel free to provide a specific recommendation. Again, we're on a 3-minute time limit. Repetitive commentary is not welcome. If you are in agreement with previous testimony, please reference the previous testimony. And again, personal attacks and or belligerent behavior is not welcome. If this occurs, you will be ruled out of order and instructed to sit down. So given that, as an introduction, I will just start going down the list. And some of you may have not signed up to address the board. I'm just going to yell your name. If I don't hear, then we'll just move on to the next one. Patrick Adams, David Lau, Alan Richter, Joe Kustrup, Gertie Zerbel, Derwish Shambly, Karen Casperson, Craig Wisty, Ashley Duman, Vince Meyer. You're first on the hit parade.
Looks like you pretty well got her cut and dried, but we're still going to go through the motion. Vince Meyer, Millbank. Many in our community members have signed up for turbines as far back as 2008. 2012, Boulevard Associates sent out a letter terminating contracts based on criteria: local marketing opportunities, wind resources, and environmental. So what has changed so much with the local market? South Dakota produces enough power for South Dakotans. Have the wind resources, have they changed? If so, does that mean that the wind may slow again? In 2 years, then what will happen to the turbines? What were the environmental issues? Shallow aquifers, wildlife, pollinators, eagle's nest. Turbines affect all of these. Why is today different than 2012? Production tax credits, and renewable energy mandates from Minnesota. When community members signed up in 2008, they were not told of the 500 to 600 foot onshore 4.2 megawatt turbines. They did not know, and some still are unaware of the health-killing infrasound and low-frequency noises, strobe light flicker, blade, and ice throw. Many were told of the riches they would get a turbine, but did not fully investigate the fact that the contract takes all property rights from fence to fence. Leases for less than an acre a turbine. Many did not understand that the turbines may cause them more expense than they will ever be paid. In Illinois, 84 participating landowners have mechanic liens placed on their property when Apex did not pay their bills. At the South Dakota PUC hearing 18026, Scott Reuter said he hadn't received any payment for next year in over a year for a turbine that was struck by lightning. But even sadder, he talked about the stress of his family from living in an industrial wind turbine project. The shadow flicker caused him to change the way when he farms, but the infrasound drove him out of his home. He ended up buying a house in town and has to drive back to the farm where he grew up. This is just one of the many awful realities of living too close to turbines. As a veteran, we were trained never to leave someone behind. This ordinance clearly was written to protect the wind corporations and a few participators' pocketbook, and not the community's health, safety, and welfare. This WES ordinance does not protect the citizens of Grant County. I ask that you reconsider the setbacks and set them at a 2 mile from the property lines following a waiver. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. John Wold, Tim Gatt, Jamie Gentile, Tyler Wilhelm, Sam Massey, Sarah Sappinen, Miles Schumacher, Chris Olson,
Yes, please.
Good evening again, members of the board. My name is Chris Olson. I'm from Ancaster, Ontario. hold a PhD in environmental health. I've spoken to you before on behalf of NextEra and the Crown Ridge project about the ordinance changes. I'm fully in support of the changes in the ordinance now as written, and the proposed ordinance that you're planning to potentially move on to County Commission. On November 16th, I sent you a 4 or 5 page letter that detailed why scientifically, and that followed up and had attached to it the 25 page paper with over 40 scientific references as to what the basis would be for the 1,500 feet or the 45 decibels. It included a section, a lengthy section on infrasound and low frequency noise that's been discussed, blade throw, ice throw, and the like. So I believe the way that you modified the ordinance is going to be protective of the health, safety, and welfare of your residents. Thank you.
Anthony Schrader.
Aye.
I'm gonna take a shot at this. Either a Steve or a Stan with a K is the last name, first letter from Summit.
Steve can, but he's
Okay. Tim Lindgren.
Tim Lindgren, 16050 464th Avenue, South Shore. My wife and I are currently signed up with the NextEra Crown Ridge 1 project. When signing up with the project, we were convinced that we were doing the right thing, having the chance to produce so-called green energy. In the past year, we have read the book Paradise Destroyed by Greg Hubner and have done research on the effects of shadow flicker and infrasound on human health and the health of wildlife and domestic animals. Also the dangers of ice throw, not to mention the amount of fossil fuel, steel, and concrete used to construct the turbines, and the lowering of property values of homes within wind projects. We don't like the fact that we would be making money off other people's property. We would be taking away our neighbors' property rights by inflicting flicker, audible noise, and infrasound, and all the health effects on their animals and themselves. Good neighbors don't put up industrial wind turbines. We want to be good neighbors. Please protect the health and safety of our people in Grant County. Let's ask ourselves 2 questions. Even if you are a strong supporter of wind energy, what is wrong with having at least a 3/4 mile setback from homes? The worst that can happen is that you may not get a wind turbine on your land. Is having money in our pockets going to offset the depopulation of our rural communities, constant migraine headaches, sleep deprivation, and even suicide? We are currently locked into a 30-year contract that we probably cannot get out of. One clause in the contract mentions that in the event that NextEra ever files for bankruptcy, their creditors can put a lien on any property where a turbine, substation, or transmission line is located, which means that someday a bank in a foreign country could end up owning Coddington, Dual, and Grant counties. We protest the fact that 4 members of the Grant County Planning and Zoning have conflicts of interest. 2 members have signed leases. 1 works for a power company, 1 has family members with signed contracts and owns a hotel with extended stay suites and stands to profit from construction projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Linda Lindgren.
Linda Lindgren, South Shore, 16050 464th Avenue. Protect our beautiful Grant County. A few weeks ago, I was driving through our beautiful countryside on my way to my part-time job in Minnesota. I was literally crying tears of joy, thinking that it looked like we were making progress in our fight against big wind. Being originally from Minnesota, I greatly appreciate the rolling hills, pasture land, and fields and clear skies. My joy of the possibility of keeping our status quo was just after the board decided to wait until after the new ordinance was passed to decide on the conditional use permit. The board decided to work on the wind ordinance some more after feedback from the people. The information was nothing new, as they mentioned. They must have just wanted to look good in front of a very anti-wind audience. The setbacks were not changed, even though the two board members, without a conflict of interest, repeatedly asked for greater setbacks. Only a couple of stupid cut and paste items were changed. No measures were made to protect our environment and the people of Grant County. I felt such joy in my heart realizing that our unique rolling hills carved out by glaciers would be unobstructed by industrial wind turbines higher than the skyscrapers in big cities. Rural agriculture land would not be taken over by wind industry. My best friends who have pre-existing health conditions would not have to move away. My husband and I would not have to move away from the farm he was born on. We would continue to be in the fly zone for migrating birds. Eagles and deer and other wildlife could still thrive. Hunters and tourists would still love to visit our area. This would become even a more important part of our local economy as other areas of the state and the country are littered with wind turbines. Grant County, you are special, unique and beautiful. Let's protect Grant County's land and people. I also want to go on record that I object to the 4 board members with a conflict of interest who are breaking state law by discussing and voting on the wind ordinance and voting on the conditional use permits. Changing the chairs for different things really doesn't mean anything, because when you vote on one thing, you're affecting your own pocketbook anyway, because if one section of the wind turbines gets voted out or bigger setbacks, that affects everything. So all 4 board members should be recused. Thank you. And this is what a 1,800 feet setback would be. 1,400. And you can see that it's not enough.
Christy Mulligan.
Christy Morgan, Twin Brooks. The minute changes to this ordinance did nothing to uphold Section 103 and Section 104 of the Grant County Planning and Zoning Ordinance to protect public health and safety. Furthermore, it strips the non-participators of their right to quiet enjoyment of their property. The conflicted planning commissioners did their best to protect theirs and wind industry's financial interests, while allowing risk and harm to our community. Last week, at a dual county hearing where wind industry once again joined paid by wind public officials and worked to deny due process. An attorney for wind, when talking about non-participating landowners, said he can only control his property, not the property around him. We agree. It is just that industry and participators only want property rights to apply to them. This ordinance allows strobe light flicker to cross the fence line and penetrate into our homes. The board has effectively taken my land and allowed a for-profit corporation and a neighbor to control the land and what happens inside my home without my permission. Strobe light flicker applies to anyone living within 3/4 of a mile up to a mile of an industrial wind turbine. Zero flicker should be allowed to cross the fence line of a non-participator or road. I want to know how allowing flicker promotes public health and safety. That is the ordinance. This ordinance does not even address infrasound or low frequency noise, even though the board has received information about vibroacoustic disease and other health effects from ILFN. They have blatantly decided to use a pathetic and arbitrary 1,500 foot setback, which is very difficult on Grant County, which is very different on a Grant County, well, that just got thrown out the door. In order to protect the citizens' health in county from lawsuits, the board must use science, and that science comes from the American National Standards Institute Guidelines for Community Noise. ANSI guidelines must be in this ordinance. The board did not even consider the fact that Grant County residents are not allowed to microsite buildings, but not from their multinational companies that get special treatment with blanket and vague conditional use permits. Lastly, rural residents deserve the same protections as people living in town. Setbacks should be the same for everyone. 2 miles allowing for a waiver. This does not zone turbines out, it allows turbines where people want them, and they are willing to risk everything for a short-term, unguaranteed check for a fence-to-fence easement of all of their property rights. Stand by for questions.
Thank you. Frank Eccles. Jennifer Colbeck. Sean Hensland.
Originally didn't plan to speak, but I guess I owe this board an apology. Last time I was here, I got a little carried away when my 3 minutes ran out, and my frustrations, I know, showed through. I want to talk a little bit about what the attorney had to tell you today. I don't want you to get shell-shocked and afraid to do anything because you think you're constrained. Our and your zoning is minimum requirements, and I think if you talk with him, and I'd encourage you to do that, to find out, have him give you a ruling when it says minimum requirements, was brought up earlier, because I think you have leeway when you have minimum requirements. In addition, if you look at the board's responsibility, you have a responsibility to look at about 7 or 8 items. And in those items, this is the thing I wasn't able to get finished with last time, those items require you to look at property values on adjacent properties, health effects, and the like. And you have to come up with solutions if there's any of those. Now, I have a hard time believing that all the people that have talked here that are against it are giving you a bunch of baloney. Because a lot of that stuff, we've spent a lot of time looking into these various reports, and the stuff that we're giving you isn't always baloney. A lot of it's good. And you gotta consider that, and you gotta say to yourselves, okay, am I covering it? Am I covering it? If you aren't covering it, you aren't following your rules. The rule says you have to look at the health effects, weigh them out, decide whether or not we have to do anything. Maybe you think you got it covered, maybe you do, but I hope you've looked at it very closely. A lady brought up before, 80-some different reports. Look them over. You got to make that decision. This is not your out to be able to say, oh, I listened to that attorney and I can't make any changes as long as they did word for word. I can't make any changes. That's wrong. That is wrong. The other thing I want to bring up, minimizing footprint. I've seen 3 or 4 reports come from these companies. Minimizing footprints to them is they take their electrical stuff and put it on their turbine. It doesn't say minimize the site of a turbine, it says minimize the size of a WES, the entire system. They're supposed to compact that as small as possible. I've seen no efforts at all to make these areas small as possible, which would minimize the impact on adjacent property owners. They do not have, at least I have not seen them even address that, and that's one thing I think you ought to look at. Also, one of the first things I mentioned, I think you got a lot of stuff in your zoning you just ought to toss out. The fence for an individual's property, that's between him and the leaser. Whether he's got 3 feet of topsoil put back on, that's between him and the lease. You know, the developer and the owner of the property. The county shouldn't be involved with that. You're wasting a lot of time and money and effort if you're going to be called out on every one of those items. There's about 4 of them I think you can take out to make your zoning better. I appreciate your time, and again, I apologize for my performance last time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Kurtz. Nicole Burry. Jerry Burry. Derek Nelson. Derek Nelson from Millbank. Bert Lair. William Tostinson. Tracy Rostenberg. Rosenberg. Shirley Weiss. Kenny Weiss. Kathy Tyler. Thank you.